I've always found something magical about eclipses. There's something poetic about the sun and moon dancing across the sky, one temporarily obscuring the other, like cosmic lovers playing hide and seek. That's why I was standing alone in Richmond's Observatory Park at midnight, my expensive telescope pointed skyward, while most responsible executives were home getting their beauty sleep before another workday. The cool autumn air nipped at my cheeks as I adjusted my viewfinder. Being CEO of Green Solutions meant I rarely had moments like this. Quiet, personal, mine. My assistant had quit last week, my inbox was overflowing, and the board was breathing down my neck about quarterly projections. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, the moon was being swallowed by Earth's shadow. "Excuse me, is this spot taken?" I turned to find a woman about my height standing uncomfortably close. The park was practically empty, acres of open space, yet she'd chosen to stand right beside me. "I'm sorry to intrude," she continued, hugging herself against the chill, "but my telescope app crashed, and I've been looking forward to this lunar eclipse for weeks." Under the dim park lights, I could make out waves of rich brown hair framing a face with delicate features. She wore jeans and an oversized astronomy department sweatshirt that somehow looked stylish on her slender frame. "Alexandra Green," I said, extending my hand on instinct, the same way I'd introduced myself to countless business associates. "Melissa Reed." Her hand felt small in mine, but her grip was surprisingly firm. "Would you mind terribly if I borrowed a peek?" I hesitated. My telescope wasn't just any model. It was a Celestron Egged, worth more than some used cars. But something in her gray eyes, eager and almost luminous in the darkness, made me step aside. "Be my guest." She bent forward to look through the eyepiece, and I found myself noticing the elegant curve of her neck, the way her hair fell forward like a curtain. I quickly looked away, focusing on the actual sky instead of the stranger. "Oh my God, it's beautiful," she whispered. "The shadow is just starting to creep across. Look!" Before I could respond, she grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the viewfinder. Our shoulders pressed together as we awkwardly tried to share the telescope's eyepiece. Her perfume, something subtle with hints of vanilla, momentarily distracting me from the celestial show. "Your turn," she said, stepping back. When I looked through the lens, the moon was indeed being gradually consumed by shadow, the curved edge of Earth's silhouette unmistakable. "It's perfect," I murmured. "The ancients thought eclipses were omens," Melissa said, her voice closer to my ear than I expected. "Harbingers of major life changes." "I don't believe in omens," I replied, adjusting the focus slightly. "But I do believe in physics and astronomical precision." She laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to ripple through the quiet park. "Of course you don't. You strike me as very practical." I straightened up, oddly defensive. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you have excellent taste in telescopes," she countered with a smile that reached her eyes. "And that you're willing to share with strangers. That tells me something." We took turns watching the eclipse progress, our conversation flowing from astronomy to our jobs to our favorite spots in Richmond. When her fingers brushed mine as we both reached for the focus knob, I felt a jolt that had nothing to do with static electricity. 3 hours later, as the eclipse ended and we reluctantly packed up my telescope, I found myself doing something completely uncharacteristic. "We should do this again sometime," I said, pulling out my business card. "For the meteor shower next month, maybe?" Melissa took the card, her fingertips lingering against mine. "I'd like that." She entered her number into my phone. "Call me," or text, for astronomical purposes, of course. Walking back to my car, telescope case heavy in my hands, I couldn't shake the feeling that despite my disbelief in omens, something significant had just aligned in my life's orbit. 2 weeks had passed since the eclipse, and I hadn't called Melissa. Not because I didn't want to, her number seemed to burn a hole in my phone contacts, but because Green Solutions was in crisis mode. Our sustainability director had quit unexpectedly, 3 major clients were threatening to walk, and my executive assistant Lisa had finally made good on her long-standing threat to retire. I needed someone exceptional to replace her, someone organized, intelligent, and capable of handling the barely controlled chaos that was my professional life. "Your 9 o'clock interview is here," the temporary receptionist announced over the intercom. I sighed, straightening the stack of resumes on my glass desk. This was the 4th candidate today, and the previous 3 had been painfully underwhelming. I smoothed my blonde hair and adjusted my tailored navy suit, preparing my thank you for your time speech before the interview even began. The door opened, and I nearly choked on my coffee. "Ms. Green," said Melissa Reed, looking radically different from the casual stargazer I'd met 2 weeks ago. Her brown hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon, her gray eyes complemented by subtle makeup, and her casual sweatshirt replaced by a crisp white blouse and charcoal pencil skirt. "Melissa," I stammered, rising from my chair. "This is unexpected." She smiled, professional but with a hint of the warmth I remembered from that night. I was equally surprised to see Green Solutions on the job listing. "Your company's environmental innovations are legendary." I gestured for her to sit while my mind raced. Was this a coincidence? Had she known who I was at the park? No, her surprise seemed genuine when I'd handed her my business card. "Your resume is impressive," I said, scanning it quickly. "MBA from Wharton, executive assistant experience at 2 Fortune 500 companies, fluent in 3 languages." "Thank you. I believe I'd be an excellent fit for this position." For the next 20 minutes, I conducted the most professional interview I could manage, while trying to ignore the memory of how her hand had felt on mine under the stars. She answered every question perfectly, better than perfectly. She was exactly what Green Solutions needed. And exactly what I needed to avoid. "Why did you leave your last position?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. "The CEO retired. His replacement brought in his own team." She held my gaze steadily. "I'm looking for a company where I can put down roots, Ms. Green." I stood abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked downtown Richmond. "This role requires long hours, intimate knowledge of my schedule, my preferences, my life." I turned to face her. "It's a very personal working relationship." "I understand boundaries, Alexandra," she said, then quickly corrected herself. "Ms. Green, I'm extremely discreet and professional." The slip into familiar territory hung between us. I should have ended the interview right then. Instead, I found myself saying, "When can you start?" "Tomorrow," she replied without hesitation. "The salary is non-negotiable," I warned. "That's fine. You'll need to sign extensive NDAs." "Of course." We stared at each other for a long moment. All the logical reasons this was a terrible idea paraded through my mind. The potential for workplace complications, the risk to company morale, the inherent power imbalance. But underneath all that, a voice whispered that fate doesn't often give second chances. "Be here at 7 tomorrow morning," I said finally. "The HR director will handle your paperwork." Melissa stood, smoothing her skirt. "Thank you for this opportunity, Ms. Green. I won't let you down." As I watched her walk out of my office, her posture perfect, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd just made the best decision of my career or the worst mistake of my life. Either way, something had fundamentally shifted in the atmosphere of Green Solutions. The company named after me suddenly felt like unfamiliar territory. That night, as I poured myself a glass of wine in my empty penthouse, my phone pinged with a text message. "Thank you for taking a chance on me. Looking forward to working together. Melissa." I stared at the screen for a full minute before typing back, "See you at 7. Don't be late." Professional, distant, safe. That's how it needed to be. But as I fell asleep that night, it wasn't spreadsheets or board meetings that filled my dreams. It was the memory of gray eyes watching the moon disappear in the night sky. 1 month into our professional relationship, and Melissa had proven herself indispensable. She anticipated my needs before I voiced them, streamlined our office systems, and somehow managed to make even the most insufferable board members smile. The woman was efficiency personified, wrapped in increasingly stylish business attire. "Your coffee, Ms. Green, black, 1 sugar." Melissa placed the steaming mug on my desk at precisely 7:15 p.m., our 3rd late night this week. "Thanks," I murmured, not looking up from the quarterly projections I was reviewing. "Did the Nielsen contract come through?" "Signed and processed." She leaned against my desk, closer than strictly necessary. "And I ordered dinner. The sustainable sushi place you like. Should be here in 20 minutes. I finally glanced up, taking in her slightly loosened collar and the wisp of hair that had escaped her usually perfect bun. After hours, the formality between us always softened around the edges. "You don't have to stay, you know. It's Friday night. You must have plans." Melissa smiled, that same warm smile from the night we'd met. "Nothing that can't wait. These reports won't review themselves." And so our evening fell into the comfortable rhythm we'd established during these late work sessions. Shared food from cardboard containers, music playing softly from my office speakers, tonight jazz. Gradual migration from desk to sofa as the hours stretched on, paperwork spread between us. "Tell me something you've never told anyone at work," I said, surprising myself with the question. Melissa looked up from her laptop. "That's dangerous territory, boss." "Humor me. I'm delirious from staring at spreadsheets." She considered for a moment. "I can solve a Rubik's Cube in under 2 minutes. That's your deep, dark secret? Mathematical aptitude?" I laughed, kicking off my heels and tucking my feet under me on the sofa. "Your turn," she countered. "I hate golf," I confessed. "Every corporate retreat, every client meeting on the links. I'm secretly miserable. I just fake enthusiasm very convincingly." Melissa's laughter filled my office, and something in my chest tightened pleasantly at the sound. That's practically heresy in executive circles. As the night progressed, our conversation wandered from childhood memories to travel disasters to favorite books. The work lay forgotten between us. Around midnight, I found myself watching her lips as she spoke passionately about sustainable architecture, her hands animating her points. Those lips. They were perfectly shaped, with just enough fullness to be. My coffee cup slipped, splashing lukewarm coffee onto the projections. "Damn it!" I jumped up, grabbing tissues. "Let me help," Melissa said, reaching for the same papers. Our hands collided, and I pulled back as if burned. "It's fine," I said too quickly. "Just clumsy." But my heart was hammering against my ribs, and I knew it had nothing to do with spilled coffee. The next evening found us both back at the office, a Saturday no less, to prepare for Monday's board presentation. Richmond was in the grip of an unusual autumn thunderstorm, rain lashing against the windows of our 20th floor office. "I think we're ready," Melissa said, saving the presentation file. "You'll knock them dead on Monday." "We'll knock them dead," I corrected her. "This is as much your work as mine." Thunder crashed outside, and the lights flickered ominously. "Maybe we should head out before the weather gets worse," Melissa suggested, glancing nervously at the window where lightning illuminated the dark sky. We grabbed our things and headed to the elevator. Just as the doors closed, a deafening thunderclap shook the building. The lights went out completely, and the elevator jerked to an abrupt halt. "No, no, no," Melissa whispered in the darkness. "This isn't happening." The emergency lights kicked on, casting an eerie blue glow over her suddenly pale face. She was pressed against the wall, breathing rapidly. "Hey, it's okay," I said, moving closer. "The backup generator will kick in soon." "I'm claustrophobic," she admitted, her voice tight. "Really claustrophobic." Without thinking, I reached for her hand. "Look at me, not the walls." Her fingers gripped mine desperately. "I can't breathe in here." I stepped closer, putting my hands on her shoulders. "Yes, you can. Breathe with me. In. Out. That's it." Her eyes locked on mine, wide and frightened. I'd never seen confident, capable Melissa like this, vulnerable, depending on me. We stood there breathing together, my thumbs tracing small circles on her shoulders, her panic gradually subsiding. "Tell me about the stars," I whispered. "Something I don't know." She swallowed hard. "The light from Proxima Centauri, our nearest stellar neighbor, takes over 4 years to reach us. What we see is always the past." Like looking through time, I murmured, suddenly aware of how close we were standing. The elevator lights suddenly blazed back to life, and the car jerked into motion, breaking the spell between us. By the time we reached the lobby, Melissa had composed herself, but something fundamental had shifted. We'd seen each other across time and space, just like those distant stars. The annual Green Solutions Gala was our company's premier networking event, drawing climate-conscious executives and politicians from across the eastern seaboard. As CEO, I was expected to sparkle, work the room, secure commitments, represent our brand. Usually I found these events tedious but necessary, like dental cleanings for my career. This year felt different. This year, Melissa would be there. I adjusted my emerald gown in the mirror, the silk catching the light as it hugged my curves. At 38, I kept myself in excellent shape, a fact highlighted by the dress's plunging back. My blonde hair was swept into an elegant updo, exposing my neck and shoulders. "You're overthinking this," I muttered to my reflection. It was just a company event. The fact that Melissa would be attending was irrelevant. The Richmond Grand Hotel ballroom was transformed for the occasion. Sustainable materials creating an enchanted forest atmosphere, complete with living trees and solar-powered fairy lights. I scanned the room as I entered, nodding to board members and major donors. And then I saw her. Melissa stood near the bar in a midnight blue dress that skimmed her body like water, her brown hair cascading over one shoulder. She was laughing at something said by James Wilson, our most important client, a man known for his wandering eyes and hands after a few drinks. Alexandra, there you are. My marketing director intercepted me with questions about next quarter's campaign. I answered automatically, my attention split between the conversation and the vision across the room. Wilson's hand was now resting on Melissa's bare arm as he leaned in to speak into her ear. I excused myself abruptly and made my way through the crowd. James, so glad you could make it. My voice was pure honey as I inserted myself between them. I see you've met my executive assistant. Indeed I have, Wilson replied, his eyes still on Melissa. She was just agreeing to dance with me. Before I could intervene, he was leading her to the dance floor, his hand inappropriately low on her back. I watched as they joined other couples swaying to the jazz quartet. Wilson pulled her closer than propriety dictated, and something hot and unfamiliar twisted in my stomach. Champagne, Ms. Green? A waiter appeared at my elbow. Make it a double, I muttered, not taking my eyes off the dance floor. 3 glasses later, I was making stilted conversation with the mayor when I felt a gentle touch on my arm. Ms. Green, may I borrow you for a moment? Melissa's voice was professional, but her eyes held a question. I excused myself and followed her to a quiet corner near the terrace doors. Are you okay? She asked quietly. You seem tense. I'm fine, I replied, too sharply. Just doing my job. Unlike some people who seem more interested in dancing than networking. Her eyebrows shot up. I was networking. Wilson's planning to double his investment if we adjust the proposal to include his subsidiaries. And that required his hands all over you? The words hung between us, revealing more than I'd intended. Melissa studied my face, her expression shifting from surprise to something else entirely. Alexandra, she said softly, using my first name despite the public setting. Are you jealous? Don't be ridiculous, I snapped, reaching for another passing champagne flute. I'm concerned about professional appearances. But my cheeks burned, betraying me. Melissa stepped closer, her perfume enveloping me. We should discuss the Wilson proposal, she said, loud enough for nearby ears. Then, whispered, you have nothing to be jealous about. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of speeches and small talk. By midnight, I was exhausted from maintaining my CEO facade while hyper-aware of Melissa's movements around the room. When she approached to tell me she was leaving, I made an impulsive decision. I'll share your taxi, I said, gathering my clutch. I've done enough schmoozing for one night. The night air was cool as we stepped outside, a welcome relief after the crowded ballroom. The champagne had left me pleasantly warm, my usual filters slightly loosened. You were magnificent tonight, Melissa said as we settled into the back of the taxi. Every person in that room wanted your attention. Not everyone, I murmured, watching Richmond's nightscape blur past the window. When the taxi pulled up to her apartment building, I surprised myself by saying, wait here, to the driver and following Melissa out. You don't have to walk me up, she protested. I know. We stood at her door, streetlights casting dramatic shadows across her face. The night felt charged, pregnant with possibility. Alexandra, she started. But I didn't let her finish. I leaned forward and pressed my lips to hers, one hand finding her waist to steady myself. For one terrifying moment, she didn't respond. Then her mouth softened, opening slightly as her hand came up to cup my cheek. The kiss was everything I hadn't allowed myself to imagine, tender yet urgent, familiar yet thrillingly new. I pulled back first, reality crashing back as the taxi honked impatiently. I should go, I whispered, not meeting her eyes. Alexandra. Good night, Melissa, see you Monday. I fled back to the taxi, leaving her standing stunned in the doorway. As the driver pulled away, I touched my fingertips to my lips, still warm from hers. What the hell had I just done? Monday morning was excruciating. I arrived at the office deliberately early, hoping to compose myself before facing Melissa. The weekend had passed in a blur of self-recrimination and rationalization. I had kissed my employee, a clear violation of company policy, professional ethics, and my own rigid principles. And I couldn't stop thinking about doing it again. When Melissa walked in at precisely 7 a.m., her expression betrayed nothing. "Good morning, Ms. Green. Here's your schedule for today." I took the tablet from her, careful not to let our fingers touch. "Thank you, Melissa." And that was it. No mention of the kiss, no lingering looks, no awkward pauses. She was the consummate professional, and I followed her lead, grateful for the pretense of normalcy. Days passed, then weeks. We worked side by side, maintaining the polite fiction that nothing had happened between us. The only evidence that anything had changed was the way we now avoided being alone together, carefully orchestrating meetings with at least one other person present. Then came the New York trip. "The Morrison Group wants to meet tomorrow morning," Melissa informed me one Thursday afternoon. "They've moved up the timeline. I've booked us on the 6 p.m. shuttle." "Us?" I echoed. "They specifically requested I attend to discuss implementation details." 4 hours later, we were sitting side by side on a commuter flight, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her leg near mine, though we were careful not to touch. The silence between us felt loaded with unspoken words. At the hotel, disaster struck. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Green," the receptionist said, her expression genuinely apologetic. "We're completely overbooked due to the technology conference. We have just one room available, a king suite." I felt Melissa stiffen beside me. "Nothing else? Anywhere in the hotel?" "I'm afraid not. We can try to find accommodations elsewhere, but with the conference..." It was already after 10 p.m. The meeting was at 8 a.m. I made a swift decision. "We'll take it." The room was spacious and elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, and dominating the center, one large king bed. "I can sleep on the sofa," Melissa offered immediately. "Don't be ridiculous. The bed is enormous." I set my laptop on the desk, not looking at her. "We're adults. We can share a bed without making it complicated." She disappeared into the bathroom to change. I used the time to slip into silk pajamas and answer urgent emails, settling on my side of the massive bed with pillows arranged between us like a barricade. When Melissa emerged in a tank top and shorts, her face scrubbed clean of makeup, looking younger and somehow more vulnerable, I kept my eyes fixed on my screen. "All yours," she said, gesturing to the bathroom. By the time I finished my nighttime routine, the lights were dimmed and Melissa appeared to be asleep, her back to my side of the bed. I slid under the covers, hyper-aware of her presence just inches away. Sleep eluded me. I lay awake listening to her breathing, wondering if she was equally conscious of my proximity. The city lights filtered through the sheer curtains, casting the room in a soft blue glow. "Alexandra?" Her voice was so quiet I almost thought I'd imagined it. "Yes? Are we ever going to talk about it?" I rolled onto my side, facing her back. "I don't think that's a good idea." She turned to face me, the pillow barrier sliding down between us. "Not talking about it isn't working either." In the dim light, her eyes were serious, searching mine for answers I wasn't sure I had. The professional distance I'd maintained crumbled under her gaze. "I shouldn't have kissed you," I whispered. "Why did you?" How to explain the inexplicable pull I'd felt toward her since that first night under the stars? The way her presence had become as necessary to me as oxygen? "Because I couldn't not kiss you anymore," I admitted finally. She moved closer, the last pillow between us falling away. "And now?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "Now I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of ruining everything. The company, your career, my reputation." Melissa reached out, her fingertips tracing my cheek with a gentleness that made my breath catch. "What about what you want? Not the CEO, not the boss, just Alexandra?" "I want you," I breathed, the truth finally spoken aloud. She closed the distance between us, her lips finding mine with certainty that hadn't been there during our first kiss. This time, there was no hesitation on either side. My hands tangled in her hair, as hers slipped under my silk top, warm against my skin. What followed was a revelation, Melissa's body against mine, our quiet gasps mingling in the darkness, the city lights witnessing our surrender to something neither of us had planned, but both had wanted desperately. Her touch was both gentle and insistent, finding places within me that had been dormant for too long. In the aftermath, lying in her arms as dawn approached, I felt both completely undone and strangely at peace. Whatever consequences awaited us back in Richmond seemed distant and unimportant compared to this newfound truth between us. "What happens tomorrow?" Melissa asked, her head resting on my chest. I pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I don't know, but we'll figure it out together." We returned to Richmond in a private bubble of happiness. For 2 weeks we were careful, professional at work, lovers after hours. Melissa still called me Ms. Green in the office, but her eyes held secrets only I understood. Nights were spent at my penthouse, where we could be ourselves away from prying eyes. "We should go public eventually," I said one evening as we lay tangled in my sheets. "I hate the sneaking around." Melissa traced patterns on my bare shoulder. "Is that wise?" Office relationships are complicated enough without the power dynamic. "I'm not ashamed of us," I insisted, kissing her forehead. "I know. But timing matters." She was right, of course. Green Solutions was in delicate negotiations with new investors. My leadership couldn't be questioned right now, so we continued our careful charade, stealing moments in private and maintaining our professional facade. Until the morning my phone exploded with notifications. Alexandra Green. My PR director's voice was tight when I answered. "Have you seen it yet?" "Seen what?" "Check your email, now." I opened the message to find a video link. When I clicked it, my stomach dropped. There we were, Melissa and me, holding hands in the lobby of the New York hotel, gazing at each other with expressions that left no doubt about our relationship. The timestamp showed it was from our business trip 3 weeks ago. "Who sent this?" I demanded. "It's everywhere," she replied grimly. "Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Someone recognized you both." The caption reads, "Richmond CEO's secret hotel rendezvous with assistant." I hung up and immediately called Melissa. "I know," she said before I could speak. "My roommate just texted me. It's going viral." By the time Melissa arrived at the office, reporters were gathered outside the building. We huddled in my office with the PR team, watching the videos spread across media platforms like wildfire. "This will blow over," my PR director assured us. "These scandals always do." But it didn't blow over. Something about the story, powerful female CEO with her younger female assistant, had captured the public's imagination. By afternoon, Melissa's name had been identified, and her social media accounts were flooded with followers and messages. "Richmond mystery woman identified," read one headline. "Who is Melissa Reed? The unknown beauty capturing headlines." Melissa sank onto my office sofa, staring at her phone in horror. "There are interview requests from morning shows. How did they even get my number?" I sat beside her, careful to maintain professional distance with the PR team present. "We'll get through this. I'll issue a statement taking full responsibility." "No," she said firmly. "We did nothing wrong." That evening, as we retreated to my penthouse, Melissa's phone rang constantly with unfamiliar numbers. Her Instagram followers had jumped from 230 to 15,000 in hours. Random people were sending her messages ranging from support to inappropriate propositions. "This is insane," she whispered, staring at her screen. "Someone offered me $5,000 for an exclusive interview about our relationship." I poured us both generous glasses of wine. "Don't engage with any of them. This will die down." But it didn't. By morning, a parody account of Melissa had appeared, gaining thousands of followers. Memes featuring stills from the hotel video flooded social media. When we arrived at work, someone had taped a printout of the video thumbnail to my office door. "This is a hostile work environment claim waiting to happen," growled my HR director after I called her in to remove it. "The board is concerned, Alexandra." The following day, the situation escalated further. A popular morning show featured a segment called From Assistant to It Girl, the Melissa Reed story, without any input from Melissa herself. "Ms. Reed," a producer called as we entered the building, "we'd love to have you on our show. America wants to hear your story." Other offers followed, modeling contracts from brands wanting to capitalize on her sudden fame, podcast appearances, even a book deal for a tell-all memoir. "This is getting out of hand," Melissa said that night, looking shell-shocked as she scrolled through her emails. "Someone wants me to be the face of their sustainable clothing line. Me, I'm an executive assistant with an MBA, not a model." I watched her from across my living room, a strange sense of dread settling in my stomach. The world was suddenly offering Melissa opportunities I could never provide. Visibility, adoration, a platform of her own. Maybe you should consider it, I said quietly. She looked up, surprised. The modeling offer? You can't be serious. Why not? You're certainly beautiful enough, and clearly, people are interested in you. Because it's not who I am, she replied. This whole thing is ridiculous. I just want our normal life back. But as I watched her unconsciously tuck her hair behind her ear, a gesture now mimicked in memes across the internet, I wondered if our normal was gone forever. Melissa Reed was no longer just my assistant or even my lover. She was becoming something I had spent decades cultivating for myself. A brand. We need to discuss your position at Green Solutions, I said 3 weeks after the video leak, my voice deliberately neutral as Melissa sat across from me in my office. I'd closed the blinds and asked not to be disturbed, a courtesy that now seemed painfully ironic given that our relationship was public knowledge. Melissa looked up from her tablet, her expression wary. The past weeks had taken a toll on us both. Her sudden celebrity had created a bizarre reality where strangers felt entitled to her time and attention. My company was under increased scrutiny, with stockholders questioning my judgment. What about my position? She asked carefully. I straightened papers that didn't need straightening. The board feels, I feel, that perhaps this arrangement isn't sustainable. Our working relationship, or our personal one? Her voice was tight. Both are complicated right now, I replied, hating myself for the corporate speak coming out of my mouth. These opportunities you're being offered, they're once-in-a-lifetime chances. Yesterday, Melissa had appeared on Richmond Morning to discuss workplace relationships. She'd been poised, articulate, and magnetic. The show's Instagram post featuring her had received more engagement than any in their history. I didn't ask for any of this, she said. Nevertheless, it's happening. I finally met her eyes. The sustainable fashion company doubled their offer. The book deal is substantial, and that lifestyle podcast wants you as a permanent co-host. She stood abruptly. So, you're firing me? I'm suggesting you pursue these opportunities. I kept my voice level, professional. Your talents are being wasted as an assistant. That's not your decision to make, she snapped. I chose this job. And now, you have better choices. Something shifted in her expression, hurt blooming into anger. This isn't about my career opportunities at all, is it? You're scared. The great Alexandra Green, afraid of a little publicity. That's not fair, I protested, standing to match her posture. I'm thinking about what's best for you. No, you're thinking about what's easiest for you. Her voice rose slightly. Having me around has become inconvenient for your image. The accusation stung because it contained a grain of truth. Board members had indeed expressed concern about the company's reputation. Major clients had made uncomfortable jokes during meetings. My leadership was being questioned in ways it never had before. Melissa, be reasonable. Your face was on a billboard yesterday. For a charity campaign I agreed to because they support women in business. She raked a hand through her hair. I'm declining most of these offers. I don't want to be known as Alexandra Green's girlfriend for the rest of my life, but I also don't want to be some influencer selling detox tea on Instagram. We stared at each other across my desk, the space between us feeling wider than the physical distance. I need some air, she finally said, grabbing her purse. After she left, I sat heavily in my chair, guilt and relief warring within me. I hadn't explicitly fired her, but I'd made my preference clear. Part of me, a selfish, frightened part, hoped she would take the offers and disappear from Green Solutions, allowing business to return to normal. The next morning, Melissa didn't come to work. Or the next. On the third day, I received her formal resignation by email. Copied to HR. No personal message, no explanation. Just legal language terminating her employment, effective immediately. That evening, I was meeting with the board when my phone buzzed with a news alert. Viral Richmond executive assistant signs major representation deal. The article detailed Melissa's new partnership with a top talent agency, her upcoming speaking tour on professional women's empowerment, an exclusive modeling contract with the sustainable fashion brand. The accompanying photo showed her looking confident and polished, a far cry from the woman who had shared my telescope on that first night. Well, that solves one problem, remarked my CFO, who had clearly received the same alert. I nodded stiffly, unable to form words around the lump in my throat. Later, in a board subcommittee meeting, I overheard myself saying, "I'm handling the situation with my indiscreet secretary. It won't impact operations." Only after the words left my mouth did I realize someone else was in the room, Melissa's friend from accounting dropping off reports. Her shocked expression told me everything I needed to know. By evening, my carefully worded text to Melissa, "Can we talk?" remained unanswered. By midnight, I had drafted and deleted a dozen more messages, each more desperate than the last. By morning, Melissa's social media accounts had been professionally overhauled, her bio now reading speaker or model or advocate. My name, my company, and our connection had been scrubbed from her public identity. She had taken my advice. She had moved on. And I had never felt more alone. 3 months, 92 days without Melissa in my office, in my home, in my life. I survived by throwing myself into work with a singular focus that both impressed and concerned my executive team. Green Solutions was expanding rapidly. New contracts, new partnerships, new acquisitions. I worked 16-hour days, took no weekends, and attended every industry event possible. Anything to avoid the emptiness of my penthouse and the thoughts that ambushed me in quiet moments. "You need to hire a new executive assistant," my HR director reminded me for the 3rd time that week. "The temp isn't working out." I waved her away. No one could replace Melissa, so why bother pretending? On my drive home one evening, a billboard along the Richmond Highway caught my attention. Melissa modeling organic cotton clothing, her smile radiant against a backdrop of blue sky. I nearly drove off the road staring at it. At home, despite my better judgment, I opened Instagram. Melissa's verified account now had over 200,000 followers. Her feed showed her speaking at women's conferences, modeling sustainable fashion, attending charity galas. In every photo, she looked confident, successful, and completely moved on. I poured myself a generous whiskey and scrolled through her life, the life that had diverged so completely from mine. Had it really been only 4 months since we'd watched the eclipse together? "Stop torturing yourself," I muttered, closing the app. But 20 minutes later, I was back, examining a recent post showing her at a rooftop party in New York. She was laughing, champagne glass in hand, surrounded by beautiful people. The caption read, "Finding my tribe in unexpected places." Her tribe didn't include me anymore. I drafted and deleted 3 comments before closing my phone in disgust. This was pathetic. I was Alexandra Green, CEO, environmental innovator, power player. I didn't pine after former employees on social media. The next morning, I announced we would pursue a major expansion into the European market, a move the board had been suggesting for years, but I'd resisted. The initiative would require my personal attention overseas for weeks. Distance would help. New challenges would distract me. "Book me on the next flight to London," I told my temporary assistant. "I'll be there through the end of the month." Europe was a whirlwind of meetings, site visits, and contract negotiations. I deliberately scheduled every minute, leaving no time for regrets or social media stalking. In London, Paris, and Berlin, I was solely focused on Green Solutions' future. Until a conference in Munich, when I spotted a familiar face on a digital advertising screen in the hotel lobby. Melissa, promoting a global sustainability summit happening that very weekend in the city. My heart slammed against my ribs. She was here, in the same city. The coincidence seemed too perfect, too cruel. I attended my scheduled meetings in a fog, checking the summit's website during breaks. Melissa was moderating a panel on personal branding and environmental advocacy the following afternoon. "Cancel my appointments tomorrow," I told my assistant that evening. "Something's come up." I told myself I was just curious, wanted to see how she'd transformed from executive assistant to public figure in just 3 months. I would sit in the back, observe her panel, and leave without making contact. A simple reconnaissance mission. But when I saw her on stage, confident, articulate, effortlessly commanding the room, something cracked inside me. This woman had bloomed in my absence. She hadn't needed me after all. I slipped out before the queue in a session, unable to bear the thought of her spotting me in the audience. Back in my hotel room, I packed hastily, arranging an earlier flight back to Richmond. Running away seemed preferable to facing her, facing what I'd lost through my own fear and pride. 3 days later, I was back in my Richmond office, buried in European expansion paperwork, when a calendar notification popped up on my screen. Lunar eclipse, Observatory Park. 1 year. It had been exactly 1 year since I'd met Melissa under the stars. I tried to ignore it. Spent hours drafting a press release about our European ventures. Scheduled back-to-back calls with overseas partners, but as evening approached, I found myself canceling the calls and leaving the office early for the first time in months. Just to clear my head, I told myself as I drove toward Observatory Park, my telescope in the trunk, just for the astronomy. The park was busier than it had been a year ago. The eclipse had been better publicized this time. I found a quiet spot away from the main gathering area and set up my equipment with practiced hands, trying not to remember the last time I'd done this. As the moon began its slow disappearance into Earth's shadow, I adjusted my viewfinder, lost in the celestial ballet happening above. So absorbed was I in the sight that I didn't notice the figure approaching until she spoke. "Fancy meeting you here." I froze, recognizing the voice before I turned to see her. Melissa stood just a few feet away, no telescope of her own this time. In jeans and a simple sweater, hair loose around her shoulders, she looked both exactly the same and completely different from the woman who had walked out of my office 3 months ago. Melissa. Her name felt foreign on my tongue after so long. "I didn't expect to see you here. Didn't you?" She tilted her head, studying me. "It's been exactly a year." We stood beside my telescope, the partial eclipse creating a surreal backdrop for our reunion. Melissa looked healthier than I remembered, her skin glowing, her gray eyes clear and direct. Success suited her. "I saw you in Munich," I admitted. "At the Sustainability Summit." "I know. I saw you leave during my panel." Of course she had noticed. Melissa had always been observant. It was one of the qualities that had made her an exceptional assistant. "You were impressive," I said honestly. "You found your calling." She didn't acknowledge the compliment. Instead, she gazed upward at the eclipsing moon. "Do you remember what I said about eclipses when we first met? That they were omens, harbingers of major life changes." I adjusted my telescope slightly, needing something to do with my hands. "I didn't believe you then. And now?" I looked up from the viewfinder. "Now I know better." An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken words and unanswered texts. Around us, other stargazers exclaimed as the eclipse progressed, but we remained in our private bubble of tension. "I saw your billboard on Highway 64, I finally said. "The organic clothing line. You look happy." "I am." She paused. "In some ways." Hope flickered dangerously in my chest. I tamped it down. "Your social media makes it clear you've moved on to bigger things." Melissa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My social media is curated by my management team. 3/4 of those posts are planned weeks in advance. But the opportunities are real. The speaking engagements, the modeling." "Yes," she interrupted, "and I'm grateful for them. But they're not what I wanted, Alexandra." The directness in her gaze made me look away. "I thought I was doing what was best for you, pushing you toward your potential. No, you were pushing me away because you were scared." Her voice was gentle but firm. "You thought it would be easier if I disappeared into my newfound fame." The truth of her words stung. Perhaps I did. Another silence fell between us. Above, the moon continued its slow disappearance. "Why did you come tonight?" I finally asked. "You don't have a telescope." "I still have the app on my phone." She smiled slightly. "And I knew you'd be here." "How?" "Because despite everything, you're a creature of habit and sentiment." She stepped closer to the telescope. "May I?" I moved aside to let her look through the eyepiece, remembering the first time we'd done this dance a year ago. She bent forward, her profile illuminated by the park lights, and something inside me ached with longing. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "Melissa, I stopped, unsure how to continue. "These months without you have been difficult." She straightened, facing me fully. "For me too. But you're thriving. Your career—" "My career is interesting," she conceded, "but it's not fulfilling. Not like what I was building at Green Solutions. Not like what I thought we were building together." My heart thundered in my chest. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I miss my job. I miss the work that mattered." She took a deep breath. "And I miss you, Alexandra, despite your best efforts to push me away." "I heard what you said to the board," I admitted, "about handling the situation with your indiscreet secretary. That must have hurt you terribly." It did. Her honesty was unflinching. But I've had 3 months to think about why you said it. You were protecting yourself the only way you knew how. I nodded, unable to deny it. I've spent my entire career building walls to keep people at a distance. Then you came along with your telescope app and somehow slipped past all my defenses. Above us, the eclipse reached its maximum coverage, the moon a dark shadow with a brilliant ring of light surrounding it. I don't want to be your assistant again, Melissa said suddenly. My heart sank. I understand. No, you don't. She stepped closer. I've been offered a position heading up the new Sustainability Education Initiative at Richmond University. A real position that uses my MBA and my new platform. That's wonderful. It is, and it means I won't be your employee anymore. Her eyes held mine steadily, which eliminates the power imbalance that concerned you so much. Understanding dawned slowly. You're staying in Richmond? I am. She reached for my hand. If there's still a reason to stay. I twined my fingers with hers, hardly daring to believe this second chance. There is. There absolutely is. Around us, applause broke out as the moon began to emerge from shadow, the eclipse slowly reversing itself. But neither of us looked up. We had witnessed enough celestial miracles for one lifetime. Instead, I pulled Melissa close and kissed her under the gradually brightening moonlight, no longer caring who might see or what headlines might follow. Let them talk. Let them speculate. This time, I wouldn't push her away out of fear. Some connections, like the paths of heavenly bodies, are simply meant to be, their trajectories written in the stars long before we have the wisdom to understand them.